Please don't turn away from him. Not everyone forgotten by the world has forgotten how to love. The words left Emily Carter's lips before she even realized the entire market square had gone silent. Rain fell softly over Silverpine City, turning the stone streets into mirrors that reflected the golden lights of the evening lanterns. Around her, merchants, nobles, and members of different wolf clans stared in disbelief. At her feet sat a man everyone had already decided was worthless. His clothes were worn, his dark cloak soaked from the storm, and his head lowered beneath the weight of countless judgmental eyes. To them, he was only a beggar. To Emily, he was someone who needed kindness. She had spent 22 years learning what it felt like to be invisible. As an Omega born into a world that praised strength above compassion, she had always been the one standing at the edge of the room. Others were chosen for their power, their family names, and their impressive abilities. Emily was known only for her gentle heart. They called her too soft, too ordinary, too weak to ever stand beside someone important. She had heard those words so many times that they almost sounded like the truth. But every time she saw someone suffering, she remembered the one thing her mother had taught her before she passed. A person's worth was never measured by what others could see. So when she noticed the stranger sitting alone beneath the old stone bridge outside the market, she could not simply walk away. The man looked up as she approached, revealing silver-gray eyes that seemed strangely familiar, like moonlight resting on a quiet lake. "You should leave," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was a sadness hidden beneath every word. "People like me are easier to ignore." Emily knelt beside him, carefully holding out a small cloth and a warm cup of tea she had purchased from a nearby vendor. "Maybe people ignore you because they never stopped long enough to see you," she replied. For a moment, the stranger said nothing. He looked at her as if he was trying to understand a language he had never heard before. Kindness without expectation, help without a price. Emily did not know who he was. She did not know that behind the worn clothing and humble appearance was a secret powerful enough to change the entire kingdom. She did not know that the man everyone called a beggar was hiding a name whispered across every wolf territory. Adrian Blackthorn, the Alpha King. But tonight, he was not a ruler surrounded by guards and golden halls. He was simply a man standing alone, searching for something he thought the world had lost. And somehow, the Omega everyone dismissed was the first person who looked past the disguise and saw the heart beneath it. As Emily offered him her hand and helped him rise, the crowd began to laugh. They laughed at her choice. They laughed at her compassion. They laughed because they believed they understood the world. But Emily only saw a person who needed someone to believe in him. And Adrian, the hidden king beneath the storm, felt something he had not felt in years. For the first time, someone had chosen him before the crown, before the title, and before the power. The morning after the storm, Silverpine City felt different to Emily Carter, as if the world itself had shifted slightly while everyone was asleep. She had spent the night wondering about the stranger beneath the bridge, wondering why a man with such calm eyes carried so much sadness inside them. When she opened the small wooden door of her cottage, she found him standing several feet away, holding the cup she had given him the night before. His clothes were still simple, but his posture was different. He no longer looked like someone waiting for the world to pass him by. He looked like someone who had spent a lifetime carrying responsibilities no one else could see. "I came to return this," he said, offering the cup carefully. Emily smiled. "You could have kept it. It was only a cup." "It was the first thing anyone offered me without wanting something in return," he answered. The words stayed with her. Emily invited him inside, not because she knew who he was, but because she knew what it felt like to be unwanted. The little cottage was modest, with a small kitchen, a wooden table, and shelves filled with old books and healing herbs. It was not a place of wealth, but it was a place where someone could breathe. The stranger introduced himself as Adrian, a name that felt simple enough to believe. He did not share his past, and Emily did not force him to. She noticed small things instead. The way he listened more than he spoke. The way he thanked her for every little kindness. The way animals near the cottage seemed calmer when he was around. But outside those quiet walls, the rest of Silverpine had already created its own story. By afternoon, whispers had spread through the market. Emily Carter, the Omega everyone overlooked, had taken in a wandering beggar. Some found it amusing. Others found it embarrassing. Of all the people she could help, she chose someone like that. One voice said near the fountain. She always was too soft. Emily heard the comments, but she continued walking beside Adrian. She had spent years trying to prove she was not weak, only to realize that she no longer needed their approval. Adrian watched her quietly. "Does it not bother you?" he asked. "What they say about you?" Emily looked toward the crowded streets filled with people who judged what they did not understand. "It used to," she admitted. "But I learned something. People who only value appearances will never understand what is hidden beneath them." For the first time in many years, Adrian almost smiled. He had met countless people who wanted his power, his title, and his protection. But this Omega wanted nothing from him. She did not know about the crown he had left behind. She did not know about the kingdom waiting for his return. She only saw a man who needed a moment of kindness. And that was exactly why Adrian could not look away. Because beneath the disguise, beneath the silence, beneath the identity he had hidden from the world, he felt something he thought he would never find. A place where he did not have to be a king. A place where he could simply be Adrian. The days that followed brought an unexpected calm into Emily Carter's small cottage at the edge of Silverpine City. For the first time in years, the quiet rooms felt less lonely. Adrian had not left, and although he still carried the appearance of a wandering stranger, Emily began to notice the little moments that revealed there was far more to him than he wanted others to know. He knew old traditions that even elders struggled to remember. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had stood before important gatherings. He carried himself with a quiet dignity that did not match the simple clothes he wore. Yet whenever Emily asked about his past, Adrian would simply look toward the distant mountains and say, "Some stories are easier to carry than to share." Emily respected his silence. She understood what it meant to hide parts of yourself from a world that had already decided who you were. She had spent most of her life being judged before anyone truly knew her. As an Omega, she was expected to stay quiet, to follow stronger wolves, and never dream of standing beside someone powerful. But Emily had learned that kindness was not weakness. It was the one thing no one could take from her. That evening, the annual moonlight gathering began in the center of Silverpine City. Lanterns decorated the streets, music filled the open square, and members of different clans arrived wearing their finest clothing. It was a celebration of unity, but for Emily, it was also a reminder of where she stood in their society. As she walked through the crowd with Adrian beside her, the whispers started again. "She really brought him here," someone murmured. "An Omega with no ambition and a man who owns nothing. What a perfect match." The words were meant to hurt, but Emily kept walking. Adrian noticed the way people looked at her, and something in his expression changed. "You do not deserve their judgment," he said softly. Emily looked at him and smiled. "Neither do you." Those simple words affected him more than she knew. He had spent months watching people bow before a title, fearing a name, and chasing power. But Emily looked at him the same way whether he had wealth or nothing at all. Then a group of high-ranking wolves approached. Among them was Marcus Whitmore, the son of one of Silverpine's most respected families. He had always believed status determined a person's value. His eyes moved from Emily to Adrian, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Emily Carter," he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Is this really your choice? You bring a stranger dressed like a beggar to a gathering meant for respected wolves." The crowd became quiet. Emily felt every eye turn toward her, waiting to see if she would lower her head like she had done so many times before. But this time she stood still. She looked at Adrian, then back at Marcus. "A person's clothing does not decide their worth," she said. "Their actions do." The square fell silent. Adrian watched her with a feeling he could not explain. She was not defending a powerful king. She was defending a person. And in that moment, beneath the lights of the moonlight gathering, Adrian realized that the woman standing beside him had more courage than many warriors he had known. But what no one in the crowd understood was that the mysterious stranger they were mocking was not just a forgotten man. He was someone whose return would soon change everything. The silence that followed Emily Carter's words felt heavier than any insult she had heard before. Under the warm glow of the moonlight gathering lanterns, hundreds of eyes watched her stand beside a man they believed was beneath them. For years, Emily had learned how to disappear when people judged her. She had learned to lower her voice, avoid attention, and accept that others would always see her as the weak Omega. But tonight was different. Tonight she did not step back. Adrian noticed the change immediately. There was a quiet strength in her that had nothing to do with rank or power. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was simply standing for what she believed was right. Marcus Whitmore gave a small laugh, unable to understand why she refused to feel ashamed. "You truly believe kindness changes everything?" he asked. "The world does not work that way." Emily looked at him calmly. "Maybe the world should." Those words reached Adrian deeper than she realized. He had spent years surrounded by people who measured every decision by influence, wealth, and loyalty. He had seen countless faces change when they discovered his title. He knew the difference between respect and fear. But Emily had shown him something rare. She offered respect before she knew his name. As the gathering continued, Adrian stayed quiet, observing the people around him. He noticed how some smiled politely while secretly judging others. He noticed how quickly they dismissed someone based only on appearances. And for the first time he understood why Emily had captured his attention. She was not blind to the world's cruelty. She simply refused to let it change who she was. Later that evening, as the crowd began to leave, Emily and Adrian walked along the lantern-covered streets of Silverpine City. The night air was cool, and the sound of distant music faded behind them. "You did not have to defend me," Adrian said. Emily looked surprised. "Of course I did." "Why?" he asked. "You barely know me." She smiled softly. "Because I know what it feels like when everyone decides who you are before they even meet you." Adrian stopped walking for a moment. Her answer was simple, but it carried the weight of a truth he had forgotten. She was not helping him because she expected something in return. She was helping him because she understood. "Emily," he said quietly, "what if the person everyone ignores is not who they think he is?" She studied his face, noticing the mystery behind his eyes. "Then I would hope someone gives him a chance to prove it." Adrian looked away, hiding the emotion that crossed his expression. He had come to Silverpine City believing he was searching for betrayal. He had expected to find greed, ambition, and people who valued power above all else. Instead, he had found an Omega who offered compassion to a stranger with nothing to give. But secrets could not remain hidden forever. Far beyond the city walls, messengers were already searching for the missing ruler of the Northern Territories. The kingdom needed its Alpha King to return. And soon, the world that laughed at Emily's choice would discover that the man walking beside her was not a forgotten beggar at all. He was the king they had all been waiting for. The morning sun rose above Silverpine City, painting the rooftops with soft golden light, but Emily Carter could feel that something had changed. The peaceful moments she shared with Adrian were becoming harder to protect from the world outside. The stranger who had arrived with nothing was slowly becoming someone people could not ignore. Not because of his appearance, but because of the quiet confidence he carried everywhere he went. He helped the elderly merchants carry supplies. He listened when others spoke. He treated every person with the same respect, whether they were wealthy or forgotten. And that was what confused everyone. A man with no home, no family name, and no visible status should not have carried himself like a leader. Emily noticed it too. There were moments when Adrian seemed to forget he was supposed to be hiding. When people argued, he naturally brought calm. When decisions needed to be made, others looked toward him without realizing it. It was as if they were following someone they already trusted. One afternoon, while Emily was gathering herbs near the edge of the forest, Adrian stood nearby watching the trees move with the wind. "You miss it," Emily said gently. Adrian turned toward her. "Miss what?" "Whatever you left behind." For a moment, his expression became distant. "How did you know?" Emily smiled slightly. "Because people who have nothing usually worry about finding something. You worry about losing something." Adrian looked at her quietly. She understood him more than anyone had in a long time. Before he could answer, the peaceful afternoon was interrupted by the arrival of several royal messengers at the city gates. Their appearance immediately changed the atmosphere. The people of Silverpine gathered as they carried the symbol of the Northern Territories, a symbol everyone recognized. The mark of the Alpha King. Whispers moved through the crowd. The missing ruler had been gone for weeks, and rumors had spread throughout every pack. Some believed he had abandoned his kingdom. Others feared something had happened. Emily looked at Adrian, but he remained calm. Too calm. One of the messengers announced that they were searching for information about a traveler who had recently entered the region. A man with silver-gray eyes and a presence that did not match his humble appearance. Emily felt her heart slow for a moment. She looked at Adrian again. Suddenly, all the small details she had noticed began connecting. The way he spoke, the way others instinctively respected him, the hidden sadness behind his eyes. But before she could ask, Adrian gently stepped away. "Emily," he said softly, "there are things about me you should know." She looked at him not with fear but with patience. "Then tell me when you are ready." Her answer surprised him. After everything he had hidden, after all the reasons he had to keep his distance, she still chose understanding over judgment. But the world around them was moving closer to the truth. The people who once laughed at Emily for helping a stranger were beginning to wonder if they had misunderstood everything. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a kingdom was waiting for its king to return. Adrian Blackthorne knew the moment had almost arrived. Soon the disguise would disappear. Soon everyone would know who he truly was. But before the crown returned to his head, he wanted one more moment where Emily saw only him. The truth Adrian Blackthorne had hidden for so long was finally standing at the edge of being revealed. Inside the small cottage near Silverpine City, the quiet warmth of the room felt different. Emily Carter could sense that something important was coming, not because Adrian said anything, but because the silence between them carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. He stood near the window, watching the morning mist disappear between the trees. For the first time since she met him, he looked less like a traveler and more like someone preparing to return to a life he had left behind. "My name is not Ethan," he finally said. Emily remained still, giving him the space to continue. "The name I gave you was only part of the disguise." Adrian turned toward her, his silver-gray eyes filled with honesty and uncertainty. "My true name is Adrian Blackthorne." The room seemed to grow quieter. Emily searched her memory and then she understood. Everyone in the Northern Territories knew that name. The Alpha King. The ruler whose decisions shaped the future of countless wolf clans. The man people spoke about with respect, fear, and admiration. But standing in front of her was the same person who had accepted a simple cup of tea with gratitude. The same man who had walked beside her through crowded streets without asking anyone to notice him. "You are the Alpha King?" Emily whispered. Adrian lowered his gaze. "Yes." He waited for the disappointment, the fear, or the sudden change in her expression. He had seen it happen many times before. People treated him differently when they discovered the crown. Some wanted his approval. Some wanted his protection. Some wanted the power connected to his name. But Emily only looked at him with the same gentle expression she had shown him beneath the bridge. "Why did you hide it from me?" she asked. Adrian took a slow breath. "Because I wanted to know if someone could see me without the title, without the crown, without everything that comes with being king." Emily looked down for a moment, remembering the man everyone ignored. The man others walked past without a second thought. "Then I am glad I met Adrian before I met the Alpha King," she said softly. Those words meant more to him than any ceremony or declaration he had ever received. Before he could answer, the doors of Silverpine's gathering hall opened, and the entire city learned the truth. The royal messengers announced that the missing ruler had been found. The crowd gathered quickly, including the same people who had laughed when Emily stood beside a stranger. Their expressions changed as Adrian stepped forward. The simple clothes were replaced by the presence of a true leader. Not because his clothing changed, but because the world finally understood what Emily had already seen. A man who carried kindness with his power. A king who remembered what it felt like to be unseen. The people who once mocked Emily fell silent. They realized she had not chosen someone beneath her. She had chosen someone the world had failed to recognize. Adrian looked toward Emily, and for a brief moment, the entire kingdom disappeared. He did not see an omega others overlooked. He saw the person who had offered him compassion when he had nothing to offer in return. and Emily finally understood that the stranger she had protected was never lost. He had simply been waiting for someone who could see the man behind the crown. The halls of the Northern Territories had never felt so alive. After weeks of uncertainty, the return of Adrian Blackthorne brought a sense of relief across every corner of the kingdom. The Alpha King had returned, and the people who once wondered if they would ever see him again now gathered to welcome him home. But among all the voices celebrating his return, Adrian heard only one that mattered: Emily Carter. She stood quietly among the crowd, still the same Omega who had offered kindness to a stranger beneath a bridge. She did not look at him with fear or admiration because of his title. She looked at him the same way she always had, like he was simply Adrian. Inside the grand hall of the royal palace, advisors and nobles gathered to discuss the future. Many were respectful, but not everyone accepted what had happened. Some believed the Alpha King should choose a Luna from a powerful family, someone with a famous bloodline, someone who could strengthen political alliances. Emily understood their concerns. She had spent her entire life knowing what it felt like to be considered less important. But this time she was not alone. Adrian stood beside her. "The kingdom needs stability," one noble said carefully. "A Luna must represent strength and tradition." Adrian looked across the hall, calm and certain. Strength is not always what people expect. The room became quiet. He remembered the nights when people judged Emily without knowing her. They saw an Omega and assumed they understood everything about her. They saw kindness and mistook it for weakness. But Adrian had seen the truth. He had seen her stand beside someone who had nothing. He had seen her offer compassion when there was no reward waiting. "When I was not a king," Adrian continued, "when I had no title and no power, she treated me with respect." His voice carried through the hall. "She did not choose a crown. She chose a person." Emily looked at him, feeling emotions she struggled to describe. She never expected recognition. She never helped Adrian because she wanted a place beside him. She only wanted someone who felt forgotten to know they mattered. Outside the palace, the story had already spread throughout the territories. The Omega everyone dismissed had been the first person to stand beside the Alpha King when the world did not know his name. The same people who once whispered about her now looked at her differently. But Emily remained unchanged. She still spent time helping others. She still listened before speaking. She still believed every person carried a story that deserved to be heard. Adrian noticed that more than anyone, the crown had returned to his head, but his heart remembered the days before it. The days when one person saw him without expecting anything. Later that evening, Adrian walked with Emily through the palace gardens beneath the moonlight. The flowers moved gently in the night breeze, and the distant sounds of the kingdom faded away. "Do you regret helping me?" he asked. Emily looked at him with a small smile. "No. I would do it again." Adrian stopped for a moment. For a king who had been surrounded by countless people, those simple words meant everything. Because Emily had proven something he had almost forgotten. True loyalty was not found in those who stood beside you when you wore a crown. It was found in the person who stayed when you had nothing but your own heart to offer. The days after Adrian Blackthorne returned to the throne brought many changes to the Northern Territories, but one thing remained untouched. Emily Carter was still the same person she had always been. She did not suddenly become someone who chased attention or power. Even inside the royal palace, where every hallway carried stories of kings and legends, she still found comfort in simple moments. She spent her mornings visiting the healers, helping organize supplies, and listening to the concerns of ordinary people, who rarely had the chance to speak with someone important. Many were surprised by her actions. They expected a future Luna to seek admiration, but Emily only wanted to help. Adrian watched her from a distance, and each day he understood more about the woman who had changed his life. She had never needed a crown to prove her worth. Her strength had always been there, hidden beneath the kindness everyone underestimated. One evening, as the moonlight covered the palace gardens, something unusual happened. Emily felt a strange warmth moving through her hands while helping an injured bird that had become separated from its family. The soft glow surprised her, and she quickly pulled her hands back. "What was that?" she whispered. Adrian, who had been nearby, immediately noticed. He had heard stories from ancient records about a rare gift that appeared only once in many generations. A power connected to the first Luna of the Northern Territories. But he did not want to assume. He wanted Emily to discover the truth herself. Together they visited the oldest library in the kingdom, a place filled with forgotten history and ancient writings. There, among pages preserved for hundreds of years, they found a description that made Emily stop breathing for a moment. It spoke of a Luna whose greatest gift was not strength in battle or influence over others. Her gift was the ability to heal hearts, restore hope, and bring peace between divided clans. Emily looked at the words quietly. "That sounds impossible," she said. Adrian smiled gently. "You said the same thing when you helped a stranger everyone ignored." She looked at him, remembering the day they met beneath the bridge. She had never considered herself special. She only did what she believed was right. But perhaps that was exactly why the gift had chosen her. Not because she wanted power. Because she never searched for it. As the truth became known throughout the kingdom, some people who once doubted Emily began to see her differently. They realized the qualities they had dismissed were the very qualities their kingdom needed. Patience, compassion, understanding. Adrian knew that the greatest challenge was never proving Emily was worthy. She had already proven that long ago. The challenge was helping the world recognize what had been there all along. Later that night, Adrian found Emily standing beneath the ancient moon trees in the palace garden. The silver light surrounded her. And for a moment, she looked like she belonged to the legends they had just discovered. "Are you afraid?" Adrian asked. Emily looked toward the stars. "A little. I never imagined my life would become something like this." Adrian stepped beside her. "Neither did I." She smiled softly. "You were an Alpha King hiding as a stranger. I was an Omega everyone ignored. Somehow, we both became something we never expected." Adrian looked at her with quiet admiration. He had once believed destiny was about finding someone powerful enough to stand beside him. Now he understood something different. Destiny was finding the person who reminded you who you were before the world told you who to become. And Emily Carter, the Omega everyone overlooked, was becoming the heart of a kingdom that had finally learned to see her. The morning of the Luna ceremony arrived with a gentle breeze flowing through the Northern Territories, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and the quiet excitement of thousands of people gathering beneath the silver sky. For generations, the ceremony had represented strength, tradition, and the bond between a leader and the person chosen to stand beside them. But this time it meant something more. It was not about power. It was about a promise that began with a simple act of kindness. Emily Carter stood beneath the ancient moon trees wearing a gown made of soft white fabric, simple yet elegant, reflecting who she had always been. She was not trying to become someone else. She was not trying to prove she belonged. She had already learned the most important truth. Her worth had never depended on what others believed. Adrian stood across from her, wearing the royal clothing of the Alpha King. The crown rested above his dark hair, and the entire kingdom looked toward him with respect. But his eyes were only on Emily. He remembered the first time he saw her. Not in a grand palace. Not surrounded by celebration. But beneath an old stone bridge, where the world had walked past him without a second glance. Emily had not seen a king that day. She had seen a person. As the ceremony began, the people of the kingdom watched silently. Many who once doubted Emily now understood the mistake they had made. They had judged her gentleness as weakness. They had mistaken compassion for a lack of strength. But the woman standing beside their king had shown them a different kind of courage. The courage to care when others chose indifference. The courage to believe when others chose judgment. Adrian took Emily's hand, and his voice carried across the gathering. "Before anyone knew my name, she gave me kindness. Before anyone respected my crown, she respected my heart." The crowd listened closely. A true leader does not need someone who only stands beside them when they are powerful. A true leader needs someone who reminds them who they are when no one is watching. Emily looked at him, remembering the lonely stranger who once believed he had to hide from the world. She remembered the quiet moments when he wondered if anyone could see beyond the title. And she knew the answer. Someone had. The ceremony continued beneath the moonlight, but the most meaningful moment was not the crown or the celebration. It was the understanding between two people who had found each other when neither expected it. Later that evening, Adrian and Emily walked through the palace gardens, far away from the voices and traditions of the court. The same garden where they had discovered the truth about Emily's gift now felt like the beginning of a new chapter. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Adrian asked. Emily smiled. "The day I found a stranger beneath a bridge? The day you saw me when nobody else did?" She looked at him warmly. "I think everyone deserves to be seen." Adrian held her hand gently as the moonlight surrounded them. The kingdom would remember the story of the Alpha King and the Omega who changed his life. But the greatest lesson was not that a forgotten girl became important because she stood beside a king. It was that she was always important. Her kindness was never ordinary. Her heart was never weak. And the man who ruled an entire kingdom discovered that the greatest treasure was not found in a crown, but in the person who loved him before he ever revealed one.